We're giving you our top 10 quarterback rankings on this edition of The Flex.
You are now listening to The Flex on the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. Subscribe now and tune in every week for all the advice you need to win your fantasy football league. And now, your hosts, Josh Rodriguez and AJ Kelly.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Flex presented by Fantasy Holics, your new go-to podcast for redraft leagues. Today, we give you our top 10 quarterbacks heading into the draft season and hit on some headlines that are circulating around the league during preseason. But first, you can follow Fantasy Holics on Facebook. Just type in Fantasy Holics, on Twitter at Fantasy Holics1, on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Holics Podcast. And it's not just us on the network's feed. Be sure to tune into Fat Boys Dynasty Podcast for your dynasty needs, and Seth Berger hosts DWF, which stands for Defense Wins Fantasy, for your IDP leagues. We have more shows down the pipeline once the season gets started, so stay tuned for that. And make sure to follow us and subscribe on YouTube. Just type in Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. We'll be giving you live shows on Sundays, stardom, situm, those type of things. Maybe some shows down the line, depending on how many people we can get. Listen, if you're a host, if you want to do some content, hit us up. Just email us at fantasyholicspodcast@gmail.com or slide into the DMs on one of the social media platforms that I just announced to you. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars, leave a comment, all that good stuff. I'm here with AJ Kelly. AJ, how you been, man?
Josh, I'm great. 1 week closer to actual action of football. When we started these rankings that we're doing, we were considering them the too early rankings because we were doing running backs kind of like mid-July.
Right.
Now here we are, middle of August. It's like, no, these aren't the too early quarterback rankings. These are the quarterback rankings. It's draft
These
season.
are the actual quarterback rankings. I did name the episodes way too early running back rankings, way too early wide receiver rankings, like AJ just said. And I can't do that for this because we're dead in the middle of, I don't want to say it is draft season, but I don't think anyone is actually drafting right now. Drafts are probably starting in a week or two. So this is this is definitely mock draft season for sure. 1000% mock draft season.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so AJ and I, we got a lot for you today. We're going to give you our top 10 quarterbacks, but before we do that, let's hit the 10-minute drill and go down the latest headlines in the NFL. All right, first up, we got Antonio Gibson. His fumbling issues continue, and Ron Rivera has now put him on special teams during practice, and he's also practicing with the third string. J.D. McKissick and Brian Robinson Jr., the rookie, the third-round draft pick, is getting first-team reps, which is kind of surprising. Antonio Gibson, I was so high on him last year. He's fallen so far down. AJ, is this a message being sent by Ron Rivera, or is this the new normal for Antonio Gibson?
I don't know if I'm quite ready to call it the new normal, but it's definitely scary.
Yeah.
I mean, for as good as he was his rookie year, and then he took obviously a step back last year, but I think that was more the Commanders. They weren't the Commanders. The Washington football team changed to the Commanders here. Right. So when he was a member of the Washington football team, he was solid. And then now as a member of the Commanders, it's like, no, we're not sure about him as our RB1. So that's never something you want to see. And the fact that, like you said, they invested a third-round pick in Robinson. That's an early round draft pick to take a running back on. So they obviously like him. You don't want to see a starting running back running with the special teams. The Bears there was a report out that they were doing it with David Montgomery, and the very next day followed by that one, it was, Khalil Herbert's getting more runs. Expect to see more of him this year. So now you're just seeing it repeated with the Commanders, and it's just accompanied with Gibson's running with the special teams, and Brian Robinson looks awesome. And J.D. McKissick's locked into the third down role. That's not going to change at any point of the year, right? That's going to be his spot. So if you're already ceding snaps and touches to Brian Robinson this early, that's never a good sign. And if you're fumbling, Ron Rivera, as any coach in the NFL, hates fumbles. So ball security is going to be key. And if you can't hold onto the ball, it's going to be hard to play.
Yeah, man, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, Ron Rivera, he's big on ball security. He's probably one of the toughest coaches in the National Football League, and for good reason. And I don't think he trusts Antonio Gibson. I think this is a new normal. I really do think so. I don't think Antonio Gibson is going to be a lead back. I don't think he's going to see 15 and 20 carries per game. I think Brian Robinson Jr. is going to get a shot. I'm not saying he's going to be, a workhorse there. Obviously, JD has that third down back role, solidified. I don't trust Antonio Gibson. And not only that I do not trust Antonio Gibson, I don't think Ron Rivera trusts Antonio Gibson. And that's all that matters. Ron Rivera is not going to keep trotting out Antonio Gibson if he keeps fumbling football, period. It doesn't matter how good he is. Ron's just not going to do it. So to me, this is the new normal for sure. Where do you think you would draft Brian Robinson?
Yeah, I think his stock moves up a little bit,
Yeah.
obviously, but I'm not ready to get crazy on it yet, where I'm still gonna take him like 10th round. Like you said, I think that might be a little bit early for where you're coming right now. I actually have him on one of my best ball teams, but he was like my 19th pick on my best ball
19th
squad at
at
that
this point
point.
is a steal. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, like so that's when I got him at that value. So now you're moving up into that round, but so I'm more excited about that because I think he creeps up a couple rounds into like the 14s where you're going to see him take. Don't expect him to take over that backfield right away. You're still going to see Antonio Gibson get his opportunities, I think, but he's going to fall down draft boards as he should as we go in these next 2 weeks heading into draft season.
And what about Antonio Gibson?
I don't like to call any player undraftable. I think there's always at a certain point
right.
where
he's going to get
like,
picked at some point.
Yeah, where it's like, so I'm not going to say like, it's like, okay, I might be able to look at my list of players and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to take any XYZ players over Antonio Gibson. But if you're getting like way late where it's like, okay, there's going to be a certain point in a draft where he's draftable. And so what's his ADP right now? What would
49
overall? God, no. I'd rather take Josh Jacobs. I'd rather take ETN. I'd rather take Breece Hall. I'd rather take Elijah Mitchell. I'd rather take AJ Dillon. I'd rather take J.K. Dobbins. So you look at all those players that are right behind him in ADP. All those guys I'm taking over Antonio Gibson right now.
Yeah, I mean, his ADP has to tank before draft season starts. I mean, you can't expect for it to stay at 49. And we're talking about the Sleeper app, by the way. For anybody listening, that's the ADP that we go by. So if you play Yahoo, if you play ESPN, ADP is different. We apologize. But, we do expect to see it to fall a lot. He's someone I'm not going to touch. He's on my do not draft under any circumstance list. I do have players like that in every single draft where I just do not want them a part of my team. And he's officially entered that. And AJ, I want to congratulate you for totally ripping me off in our Dynasty League because you traded me Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, imagine trading for Antonio Gibson. Imagine being that.
You sold high, baby. You sold high. I don't even want to tell you guys what I gave up for him. So we're going to move on to the next headline.
I'll tell you. It was a guy that's going to be featured rather highly on our top 10 QB lists. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I'm sure AJ will let you know when we speak his name. Let's move on to the next headline. Zach Wilson goes down. Looked to be, at first glance, people were thinking was a season-ending injury just because of the way he went down. It was non-contact, but it ended up being a bone bruise, and he'll be out 2 to 4 weeks, maybe a little longer than that. My question to you, AJ, you do have players like Breece Hall and Elijah Moore who are expected to be relevant players in fantasy football this year. Currently, Breece Hall's ADP is at 42, Elijah's at 89. Do you think this affects their draft stock at all?
Not as of right now. When it was thought to be a worse injury, it was definitely going to affect their draft stock to me because the Jets have that promising, young, high-flying offense that has a lot of hope. I mean, you're seeing a lot of people call them this year's Bengals. Let's not get crazy with that, but you're seeing a lot of the pieces in place where it's like, okay, what second-year quarterback can take that leap that Joe Burrow just did? The Jets have been tied to that a lot. They improved their O-line. They get a young, really good running back in Breece Hall, and they put some weapons around Zach Wilson. And then you almost remove Zach Wilson from that equation. That was a very scary thought for the ADPs of Breece Hall, Elijah Moore, even Garrett Wilson, who is maybe a player like as a late round draft pick, where now maybe he's not a guy you're going to be drafting. But with it being just a bone bruise, I think that's the best news the Jets are hoping for. They haven't ruled him in for week 1 yet, but they also haven't ruled him out for week 1. I think they're going to give him another week and a half, reassess it, see where he's at. I think he plays week 1.
I don't know if he plays week 1, but I am kind of cautious now, a little more cautious. I think Breece Hall's a little overvalued at his ADP anyway, at 42. I like Breece. I think Michael Carter's still going to be involved, and I have to see it first. That Jets offense, they do have talent. They are young. The line's still kind of being reworked there. I'm not comfortable drafting Breece Hall as talented as he is at 42. Just me as a rookie, kind of skeptical there. Although I do think he's a good prospect and will have a good career and will be a relevant fantasy football player. I just think there are better options there. I was high on Elijah Moore, though. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if this affects his ADP, but for me, I might hesitate a little bit taking him there. There might be other players who have the same ADP or around there who I might like just as much as him, and now I might not take Elijah just because I don't know how long Zach's going to be out. Obviously, Joe Flacco, I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I mean, he won a damn Super Bowl. He can probably get the job done, but I don't know how fantasy relevant Elijah Moore will be under Joe. And we know the Jets are not going to rush Zach Wilson back. I know it's 2 to 4 weeks. They said perhaps longer. They might want him by week 1. But to me, in my head, it's speculation. It's a guess. Just gut feeling. I think he comes back around maybe week 3, week 4. So, those are 2, maybe 3 weeks of games in the fantasy football world that you miss out on having an Elijah Moore or a Breece Hall at the full capacity of the Jets offense that you thought you were drafting. So I'm a little cautious. I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't think it affects it too much. If Elijah's there and there's not anybody else who I would rather have, I'll take Elijah. But if it's a toss-up, I don't know if I'm taking him anymore. And last but not least, talking Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. Well, actually not talking the Deshaun Watson situation. That's a whole nother podcast. But just from a fantasy football perspective, this has to blow up every single Cleveland Brown fantasy football player, right? Like, there's just no way you can draft a Cleveland Brown for your fantasy football team unless it's Nick Chubb, I assume, right?
Yeah, for me, Chubb's the one guy that you look at. We talked about Chubb in the running back episode where the point that was made was he's been productive in the past in not elite offenses. Jacoby Brissett's not going to go out there and light the world on fire, but he's a serviceable player to the point where, okay, he's a little bit of he can move the offense down the field, can throw the ball, has seen his playing time in the NFL where he goes through. So you still have to respect that, and that's going to get Chubb his. And if they're going to trade Kareem Hunt, he's unhappy, requested a trade. They said they're not going to give him the trade. We'll see how that actually plays out throughout the rest of the preseason. But that's just going to boost Chubb's stock even more. But it's a hit to Amari Cooper as a pass catcher. It's a hit to David Njoku after Austin Hooper leaves. It looks like Njoku's finally going to get his breakout season where maybe they're still serviceable streamers. And I'm not drafting Cooper looking to start him week in and week out, but I don't think I was even prepared to do that. That wasn't really one of my targets as I was going through. So like you said, Chubb's really the one guy that I think still can remain a constant in this Browns offense.
All right, that's it for the 10-minute drill. Let's move on to our quarterback rankings. We're going to give you our top 10. I know we did our top 15 for tight ends and wide receivers and running backs, but just a top 10 here. We'll exchange from 10 to 6, and then we'll give you our 5 through 1. AJ, I'll start with you. Let's start at number 10. Who do you have?
My number 10 is Aaron Rodgers, and this is probably the lowest I've ever had Aaron Rodgers on any preseason quarterback list. He belongs in the top 10 because he doesn't turn the ball over. It's like, yeah, he lost Devontae Adams, and it's like, that was obviously his favorite red zone target, a guy he trusts, a guy he goes to all the time, but he's still Aaron Rodgers. At the end of the day, he's still the one controlling the game. He's throwing the football, and he's going to find receivers. He was just in the news barking at his young receivers here. We're saying we got to stop running sloppy routes, catch the ball, do this. Listen, Aaron Rodgers is still going to put the ball in the end zone. And he doesn't turn the ball over. 4 interceptions last year. So that's to 37 touchdowns. And you're going to look at that, and he has his rapport with Allen Lazard still, and he's going to build his rapport with Watson. He's still in the top 10 for me. I don't care about the loss of Devontae Adams that much to drop him that low.
All right, in at number 10, I have Kyler Murray, and this is below his ADP. This is pretty much saying he's going to have a down year, I guess you can say. You're still in the top 10, so I don't know how much of a down year that actually is. But to me, just the vibes are off in Arizona, and I know that's not a technical, football reason for it. But, you signed a contract extension. Arizona says they want you studying. That comes out in the news, then they retract it. You're not going to have DeAndre Hopkins to start the season. So to me, Kyler's going to get you rushing yards. He averaged 30 rushing yards per game last year, had 5 touchdowns. But with the emergence of James Conner, I feel like a lot of rushing touchdowns, a lot of ground game is going to go to James as well. So takes away a little bit from that. Has a tendency to make bad decisions. I like Kyler. Don't love him this year. He's in at number 10. All right, let's move on to number 9. AJ, what you got?
My number 9 is the ageless wonder himself, and he will remain in my top 10. I don't care if he's 55 or 65. If he's playing, he's in my top 10. He led the NFL in passing yards last year. It's Tom Brady. And the flashiness of fantasy football is the running quarterback. And the fact that Tom Brady has done what he's done from a fantasy perspective is leaps and bounds. It's just incredible. It's why he's the GOAT. I don't even know. There's nothing else that even needs to be said.
No, I mean, you hit it right on the head, man. And Tom Brady, listen, I'm with you. Until he's 65, until he's collecting Social Security, he's going to be in my top 10 as well. And he's probably going to be putting up stats as well. And at number 9, it's someone I kind of feel very similar to Tom Brady. And that's Aaron Rodgers. He was your number 10. He's in at number 9 for me. I like Aaron because he doesn't turn the ball over. Like you said, 4 interceptions. You know you're not going to get, negative points each week. You know you're not going to get an implosion from your quarterback. There might be some games where he doesn't throw for touchdowns, but he's not going to kill you from week to week. Had over 4,000 yards last year. And to be honest, that's low for him with 37 touchdowns. Receiving core is not too great. I expect him to have very similar numbers this year than what he had last year. Maybe high 30s touchdowns, maybe low 40s, around there, 35 to 40 touchdowns, plus 4,000 yards. I think he's going to have very similar numbers this year to what he had last year, and I'm comfortable putting him at number 9. All right, AJ, number 8. Who do you got?
Number 8, I have New in Town, Broncos country. Let's ride. Russell Wilson himself, I think it's hard to say they're putting him in the best offense he's been in because Seattle had a good offense, right? Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, they had weapons. Chris Carson was certifiable runner until obviously he breaks his neck, retires. But I just think the offense is going to be really explosive this year with Cortland Sutton, with Jerry Jeudy, with Javonte Williams, with Melvin Gordon, with Okuwebanam. So I just think he can crack that top 10 in production from a fantasy level where he comes in at number 8 for me.
I like Russ, man. He was number 11 for me. If we're doing honorable mentions, he'd be the first one I mentioned. You guys know my Cortland Sutton take, so that just tells you what I think of Russell Wilson. Also, Russell Wilson, my pick to an MVP. So do what you want with that. That's not fantasy football related. That's just strictly NFL related. But in at number 8, I have Joe Burrow. Last year, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Had a fantastic end to the season. Started off a little slow, but ended up with 4,600 yards. Has one of the best wide receivers in the game in Jamar Chase. Honestly, and T. Higgins is probably as good as any number 2 wide receiver in the league as well. This is going to be a very potent offense. I expect him to have very similar numbers. He had 34 touchdowns last year. I think he's going to have around high 30s, maybe 38 again. The interceptions are going to be there because he takes a lot of chances. He throws the ball deep. 4,600 yards. I expect him to have about the same. I think he's going to have very similar numbers this year that he had last year. Maybe make a few more mistakes. I like Joe Burrow nonetheless. Give me Burrow at number 8. AJ, number 7, what you got?
My number 7 is Kyler. Kind of the same reasons you were talking about having him down at 10. You look at his numbers last year. When he didn't have Hopkins, he wasn't as good. He wasn't as productive. He lit it up in the first half of the season. In the second half of the season, when DeAndre was banged up, wasn't playing as much, you saw Kyler take a step back. So now he plays the first 6 games of the year without him. But I still think his rushing upside, and I think this Arizona offense is enough to keep him up at 7 for me. I think he is going to be a rock-solid midseason trade target. If you need, if the quarterback position for you could take you to the next level with a team, I think Kyler Murray, I think he starts a little bit slower. So I think a team that might have invested somewhat of a high pick in him, maybe you get a better return for him and he can fill out your starting lineup where I think that's a potentially really good midseason trade target.
All right, and at number 7, I have Matthew Stafford, 41 touchdowns last year, 17 interceptions. He'll do that, and 4,800 plus yards. Matthew Stafford, everybody knows me. Matthew Stafford's one of my favorite quarterbacks, even one of my favorite fantasy football quarterbacks. He's finally in a system where he can thrive. He's going to throw the football. Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson. I think Tyler Higgins is going to have a nice year. That offense is going to move the football. They're going to score on everybody. That just is what it is. He's going to have 2 to 3 touchdowns a game. You can lock him in for that. I think you can lock him in for 20 points a game at least. I think he throws for 40 touchdowns again. The problem with him is just turning the football over. Is he going to throw 17 interceptions? Is he going to throw 20-plus interceptions? I don't think he does. I think another year in that offense means he's more comfortable. I think he has a fantastic year, something with 40-plus touchdowns, maybe 12 to 14 interceptions, around the same amount of yards. Gave me Stafford at 7. And number 6, AJ, let's close this out. Who do you have?
6, I got Burrow. Like you said, kind of the explosive offense, same type where you have him, where he has Jamar Chase. He still has T. Higgins. Last year, 6th in the NFL in passing yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I think 30 touchdowns is almost a guarantee with him, with what I expect that offense to do. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he gets up in the 38 range. 40 might be a stretch, but I think he's anywhere between that 35 and 40 touchdowns. And he is still somewhat of a mobile threat, where he's not the mobile threat that the other guys in the top 5 might be, or some of the other quarterbacks where you're going to see, but he can still move. And I still think that offense, what he does with those receivers takes him to the next level, where it's almost the year of the passing quarterback. It's like where you have him and a guy that we'll talk about later in the AFC West, Justin Herbert, whereas it's like those guys are focused as pocket passers, but they shred defenses, and that's enough to have Burrow at 6 for me.
All right. And at number 6, I have Jalen Hurts. Only had 16 touchdowns last year. He had 9 interceptions, but he did average 52.3 yards per game rushing with 10 rushing touchdowns, which made it good enough for the 9th overall quarterback. He set, the fantasy football world on fire in the first half of the season, at least. And I think adding A.J. Brown gives that passing offense an extra dimension. Is he going to take the step forward? That's the question with Jalen Hurts, and I'm going to bet that he does. I'm not saying he's going to be, a Justin Herbert or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes setting the league on fire, but I do think he's going to be competent enough where he is giving you 20 to 25 fantasy points per game, perhaps even more, just because from rushing yards alone. The Eagles do not have a single running back. I know Gainwell's good. Miles Sanders has had success in the past, but they don't have a single running back that I can rely on from a fantasy football perspective, which makes me even more comfortable taking Jalen Hurts, because I do think that you're going to see him get pay dirt maybe every game, maybe every other game at least. He's going to have rushing touchdowns. He's going to have rushing yards. And when you have that coming from your fantasy football quarterback, that's pretty much the holy grail there. So I have him at number 6. All right, that's our 6 through 10. We're going to switch it up a little bit, give you our 5 through 1 all at once. AJ, I went first last week. You go first this week. What do you got, 5 through 1?
All right, here we go. 5 is Jalen Hurts. Everything you just said about having him at number 6, expecting him to take that step. They give him A.J. Brown. I think this is where he can take the step in passing. I've been hesitant in other ones about him as a quarterback for the Eagles, but for fantasy purposes, you talked about the rushing numbers that he has. Averaging 50 rushing yards a game. That's an extra passing touchdown plus.
Yep.
That's what that is for most leagues when it's a 4-point passing touchdown. So that, on top of the fact that, like you said, they don't really have a bell cow running back that they love to go with, right? So when you get down to the red zone, Jalen Hurts is almost your running back. He's your threat to run the ball into the end zone in that perspective, where they're not designing running plays for other people. It's for him to get those rushing touchdowns. Number 4, I have Lamar Jackson. Everyone knows what he's capable of. He does lose Marquise Brown, but he still has Mark Andrews. That's obviously his number 1 target, red zone, all throughout the field. And then I expect Rashad Bateman to take another step this year, so I expect that to help Lamar Jackson out. But the downside for that is, outside of Andrews and Bateman, they don't really offer too much in the passing target play, but Lamar Jackson is always going to be a threat with his feet to give you 100-plus rushing and a touchdown on any given game. 3, I have Justin Herbert. Like we said about Burrow, kind of can light the league up from the pocket, where anything you could see and use some mobility, but he easily surpasses 30-plus passing touchdowns again this year, where he was up to 38. I think he cracks 40, might even get up into the 42, 43 range. I would like to see him cut back the interceptions a little bit. 15 interceptions last year. I think he brings that down a little bit, and I think the Chargers offense is going to be potent this year. So Herbert's my number 3. Number 2 is said quarterback from that Antonio Gibson trade, the aforementioned trade, Patrick Mahomes. Everyone knows what he's capable of, to the point where almost 5,000 yards last year, 37 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Now, those 13 interceptions, a lot of those were tip balls off receivers' hands, should have been caught. And it's like, you look back at those and it's like, okay, what were his fault? Maybe 7 of them, 8 of them. So I think you see that number come down a little bit, which keeps him at 2. And then number 1 for me is Josh Allen. Back-to-back years as the QB1. I think this one's as straightforward as it gets. It's kind of the same thing in Buffalo as it is in Philly, where when they get down into the red zone, if they're running the ball into the end zone with somebody, it's Josh Allen. Just like it's Jalen Hurts in Philly, Josh Allen is their first rushing option down in the red zone for those touchdowns. So he's the perfect dual threat quarterback. That's all there is to say about him.
All right, my 5 through 1. And at number 5, I have Tom Brady. How are you the number 3? What was he? Is he like 97 years old and he's number 3 fantasy football quarterback last year, over 5,000 yards, 43 touchdowns. Now you have Julio Jones to play with. Are you serious? Are you kidding me right now? To me, I expect similar numbers. I don't know if he's going to throw for 5,000 again, but 4.8, 4.9, 40 touchdowns. Absolutely. The only one thing you can say about Tom Brady that's a negative in fantasy football is that he doesn't really rush the football. But even then, you get a few Tom Brady sneaks every once in a while. So he's good for that as well. So Tom Brady comes in at number 5 for me. And at number 4, I have Patrick Mahomes. Losing Tyreek Hill, I don't think it's going to hurt him too much. Obviously, he's still going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the game. But I do think that Chiefs offense is going to be frustrated a little bit trying to score the football. They're not going to be as explosive. I know you just picked up Sky Moore, and I'm seeing good things in practice, but that's practice. I don't know what he's going to be. You don't know if he can replace Tyreek Hill. I don't know how Juju's going to fit into that offense yet. I do expect them to have a decent year and a good year, good enough for him to be number 4 on my top 10 rankings for sure, but I expect similar numbers to last year where he had 37 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Maybe he has around 35 to 40 touchdowns. I do expect him, like you said, though, AJ, to cut down on the interceptions. I don't think he has 13. I think he goes back to the days where he probably has single digits. In at number 3, I have Lamar Jackson. Season cut short last year, but he had over 3,500 yards total, averaged 64 rushing yards a game, which is low end for him. His MVP season, he had 80 rushing yards per game, which you mentioned. That's two touchdowns in 4-point fantasy football format. So for me, I think Lamar returns. I know he has some contract negotiation stuff going on, but to me, if he has a year similar to his MVP year, which I'm not really expecting, you can't expect him to match his MVP year, but to me, I think last year was a down year for him. So I think he's going to have around 70 rushing yards per game. I think Mark Andrews is a reliable target for him, a nice blanket, and Rashad Bateman is going to have a nice year as his wide receiver 1. If he stays fully healthy, I think Lamar Jackson is just going to be the Lamar Jackson of old. And at number 2, I have Justin Herbert. And this is because I think this is not just a breakout year for him, if you can call it that, because he's already on the scene. But I do think he's going to lead the year in passing yards. I'm calling it right now. He's my bet to win. I think he's going to have over 5,000 yards for sure. I think he cracks 40 touchdowns for sure. That Chargers offense, I mean, the Chargers are just a weird team because every year on paper, it looks like they can go to the Super Bowl and then they don't even sniff the playoffs. But fantasy football wise, give you Mike Williams, give me Keenan Allen, give me Austin Eckler, and give me Justin Herbert because he's the head of all of that. I expect a lot of points to be scored for that offense, and he's the reason why. And at number 1, I didn't want to put him. I wanted to be bold. I wanted to be courageous, but I couldn't do it. Josh Allen, just like you, AJ. 45 rushing yards per game. He had 6 touchdowns. I think you could get more this year, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think 6 touchdowns rushing from Josh Allen is actually low end. So I think he boosts that up a little bit. New offense. I think he's going to be more comfortable throwing the football. So I think the 36 touchdowns, I think that's increased. I think he gets over 40 this year. Interceptions come down. I don't expect him to have 15 interceptions. He's going to have a monster year, both on the ground and throwing the football. Definitely an MVP candidate as well. It's hard to do it, but got to go Josh Allen, number 1. Didn't want to do it, man. I wanted to be different.
But you have to.
Yeah.
He's there. He's there for a reason.
He is. He absolutely.
What you said about Herbert, though, that quadrant right there, Herbert, Allen, Williams, Eckler, is that the best trio in fantasy football? Has to be, right?
Yeah. What other running back that you can think of off the top of your head, top running back?
It's like the only other one that's almost a duo is Dalvin and Jefferson, but Herbert's much better than Cousins.
Way better.
So if you look at like the other, and then you throw in Mike Williams, who was a wide receiver borderline 1, depending on the league score.
He was the best wide receiver in fantasy for like 6 weeks.
Yeah. Where you have, but that's that offense to me, like it's absolutely insane. And like you said, they should be a perennial Super Bowl team.
1,000%.
And last year they lose the playoffs. They could have been a tie and had it. But it's like, what about another one? Brady, Fournette, Evans. There's a trio. Godwin when he's healthy, but
now
still.
Julio. I think the Chargers lead the league in points in general, just from an NFL perspective. I think they lead the league in points. I think them or the Bucks do. And for me, I mean, if you're going to be the quarterback of the team leading the league in points.
Here's your other 4-bagger, though, for an offense.
Yeah.
Which one would you rather have? Herbert, Eckler, Allen, and Williams, or Burrow, Mixon, Chase, and Higgins?
Give me the Chargers.
Take the Chargers.
I'm taking the Chargers.
I think I would too.
Yeah.
I think I would too. But I think that's the only one that can compete with that core 4 in fantasy purposes.
That's a good one. That we should make that a poll. That's a really good question. And go poll dancing next week and do that. But that does it for our quarterback rankings episode. AJ, any final thoughts?
Have fun mock drafting. You're 1 week closer, and I hope everyone's drafts play out exactly as they like them.
Yes, we have no idea what we're going to be doing next week. We'll talk about it, and you'll just have to see. You just have to subscribe and listen to the Flex next week. So tune in. Until then, enjoy the rest of the preseason. Get your mock drafts done. Ask us some questions. Hit us up. We'll answer them next week on another edition of the Flex. Until then, peace.